even enough to pay a mortgage. But I knew on paper that if I do these winning activities and I stay true to my vision, that no matter what kind of mess I make for myself, in 7 months, I'm golden, right?
Welcome, everyone, to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's hot topic, the art of detachment and its role in sales leadership, and even your culture. And to help us out with that, I'm honored to have Warren Spiwak. He is Vice President of Sales at Trucordia and a very interesting dude, which you'll get to know along the way in the conversation. Warren, welcome to the show.
Man, thank you, Carlos. This was, I've been excited about this. When we talked, I want to say it was maybe 2 weeks ago, and your proposition of, hey, I just want to have a 30-minute conversation of what can make anyone in a sales organization 1% better. And neat concept. I've been listening to the show. I really have enjoyed it. And yeah, excited to kick this off, the art of detachment.
Well, Warren, we appreciate your support, man. Let's start out by describing what we mean by the art of detachment. In your own words, what do you mean by the art of detachment?
I've been thinking a lot about this, like how do you summarize it as quickly as possible? It's detaching from an outcome. If you think about it, you know, I have a 22-year insurance background. I've owned some very fast-paced insurance agencies. Ultimately, I've had roles where I've been in leadership roles and in sales roles within some of the top brokers in the world, really. And something that I always notice, and again, I'm thinking about clients first, right? Whenever I do anything, when it comes to risk management or mitigation, or even, you know, being that I sit down with CFOs almost daily and entrepreneurs, if I am showing up in a first meeting, in a first call, and I've got an outcome in mind, I'm actually working against sales. I'm working against being authentic, and it actually can affect the conversation in a very negative way. And here's why. Pressure kills trust. And if I'm pressuring you down a path, I'm likely showing up tone deaf, or certainly my agenda is more important than yours. And with 22 years of sales, one of the things that I see over and over again in organizations is when they're so result driven that they don't care about the assessment and recognizing what challenges their clients are dealing with, they're missing the boat.
All right. So let me rephrase this to make sure I got my arms around it. So by assessment, we're talking like discovery or those initial conversations. Did I get that part?
Yes.
All right. And then showing up for this initial conversation, discovery, assessment with someone. If you're showing up for going, I'm going to be selling a max, you know, with dollar signs in your eyes, then that really hurts you in your ability to really listen, understand, build trust with someone, to really have an authentic relationship to begin with. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. And another part of this is just think about this. Just think about whether you're a young producer. In the insurance world, we call our salespeople, a lot of them are titled as producers. If you're a young producer or new to the industry and you're under a lot of pressure to grow and you potentially could be on a draw, all of that pressure and on top of that, wanting to do a good job could really ruin a conversation if you're feeling that in the moment. And by the art of detachment, you're able to table that. And this, not only is this good for sales, this is good for life in general. When we show up authentically looking to make a difference, and again, instead of trying to hit a result for the end of the meeting, more so selling the assessment, saying, if I can learn more, if I see a challenge, if I know that what my background and expertise is can add value, I want to be more valuable to you, Carlos, in a meeting than you are to me. So I have to detach from the financial aspect of it. Maybe even a lot of people are data driven to where they're wanting to be at a certain, caliber within their stats, within their company. All of those things are great, but not in sales, not when it comes to belly to belly conversations with high level very caring clients and prospects that need your help and your guidance. You do need to show up and be in real time, authentically observing where you can make a difference.
All right. So Warren, as you're talking through it, I can relate to it. I can see myself in it. And then I'm also trying to think of our listeners and how they might push back in some ways. And one of the pushbacks might be, well, it's easy for you to say that, Warren. You sell large ticket items that have a renewal rate over time. Hey, I'm a transactional sales guy. I'm just getting in. Either they're going to buy from me or not, and I'm moving on to my next one. And even in my head, as I tell you that, Warren, I kind of, I'm almost arguing with myself, going, that might be true that you're transactional. Maybe it's smaller deals. That doesn't mean that you don't want to build a network of people that trust you and believe in you, because maybe it's not a sales today, but it could be a sales 6 months, 12 months down the road. I love your perspective.
So look, I love the pushback. Here's my pushback. My reputation, whether it's a small home and auto policy, or whether it's $1 million oil and gas opportunity, your reputation, your background, your tonality, your integrity, those are the most equitable parts of business that will last your entire career. It's also, you hear all the time where organizations and sales coaches, and even when you think about what we do with branding ourselves on LinkedIn, a lot of it has to do with having a reputation of helping people. I mean, really, at the end of the day, when people like and trust you, it goes a long way. And when you show up to a meeting and you're like, this is not a success unless I pry out these different pieces of information, or you go in with bias. This is a big issue within the insurance world. Most people think of insurance and they think property insurance, general liability insurance, professional liability. But when I'm sitting down with a producer that is trying to make an impact on their career and be successful, I owe it to them to show how the value of doing a little bit of research on a prospect, to where when you're showing up, you recognize there's actual challenges that they're dealing with that are industry driven. Because we're going back to me talking to CFOs and business owners every day, because I'm talking to CFOs in the oil and gas business every day. When I do meet a new CFO that's just looking for some insights, I can't share those insights without doing a little bit of discovery. And it's the discovery that also allows these kind of engagements, these conversations, to allow me to share the insights that aren't just related to the insurance industry, but going back to talking to CFOs every day, I'm able to share the trends and the strategies that we're seeing leveraged across their industry, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's the restaurant industry, hospitality. And so now, especially with my role here at Tricordia, one of the things that I'm always doing is in our sales huddles, it's going back to what's going on in the industries that these individuals are focused on, and knowing those challenges, and more importantly, showing up to a first meeting at a point of being curious, looking for the challenges, and then adapting what the prescription is based on what you're finding, not coming in with a pre-convoluted idea of what they need. And going back to where I was talking about property and general liability, when I see a company is completely privately owned, for me, directors and officers is a topic, right? It's how do I protect them? How do I protect them individually, but also their spouses? Because the one thing that happens in the insurance industry is when there's a claim, when something goes wrong in the street, it can be devastating to the business, to the shareholders, to the employees, but sometimes even the owner's spouses. And so the reason why directors and officers is a big thing is that is how I can protect that entrepreneur, that CFO, anyone in the decision-making process and leadership. Point being, going back to the art of detachment, is showing up with as low bias as you can, as curious as you can, because your background, your natural case studies that you come out with that will help these individuals, these organizations, let that authentically emerge from the conversation versus having a bunch of line items that you want to share because it's important to you.
Agree 100%. In fact, this kind of leads me back to thinking about, so when I talk to teams about prospecting, one of the things I talk about is, hey, when you're trying to make those initial contacts and get someone to engage, there's two things you hit on that I think are super important. One of them is your mindset coming in, which the art of detachment goes right towards, right? If your mindset is to turn this into an opportunity first and go, you don't even know this person. Why don't you just try to, hey, your mindset should be, I'm here to help because I do have amazing products, but to do that properly, I need to know more about you, your business, and what you're going through. The second thing is not everyone's going to open up to you on the first question. So what are you going to provide them of value that's going to get them to, trust you more or believe in you or see that there's value in having a conversation with you? And you talked about the fact that, look, I'm talking to other CEOs. I'm talking to other business owners. I'm talking to other businesses in these industries that are having these problems, seeing them do these things. That's your expertise that you bring to the table, which leads me to my third point, and I'm going to turn this into a question, I promise, is when I talk to teams, I go, you know what your number one differentiator is? Because people talk about the product this or services that. I go, it's you. People are going to buy you before they buy anything from your company.
Absolutely. And here's what I remind. So a lot of times when a producer is new, they might not have tons and tons of their own case studies where they can say, hey, I met someone just like you in your industry that had this problem. This is how we solved the problem. And this was the $168,000 ROI on it. Quantifying pain, whether it's financially or from a culture standpoint or from time. When you meet with a CFO or an entrepreneur, what you need to remember is that all the other CFOs in their industry likely could be competitors. Keep that in mind. So the fact that you, and this is what my point, we bring value. A producer that's talked to 5 CEOs or CFOs or COOs, anyone in the leadership standpoint that know the challenges of an industry and how they're strategizing against the trends of challenges, that information is invaluable to their next prospect, their next client. So instead of showing up feeling weak or feeling like you're attached to try to get some sort of an outcome, show up feeling valued and that your insights are going to bring something very powerful to this opportunity. And it's not so much about in the insurance world. Sometimes you'll see sales cultures where, hey, on a first meeting, we're going to find out their effective date. We're going to find out how much they're paying. We're going to find out what broker they're with. We're going to find out all these things that are really great for your home base when you come back and tell them. But if you're doing that at the cost of a relationship, talking about trust, by the way, I like to believe we all start with a very pea-sized amount of trust. And it's up to us in how we conduct ourselves, how we show up in an authentic, caring way, but still results oriented, that allows that discovery through the first and follow-up meetings that build the trust, that build rapport, that ultimately allow people to say, hey, this is someone who every conversation I've had, they've brought value, they've brought insights, and why in the hell am I not doing business with them? That's where you want to be, not attached to just what you're trying to check mark for management or your organization. And last thought on this is, speaking just of the culture side, it's easy for people to just be results oriented to the point where it's just results. And it's like, here's the spreadsheet. Are you in green, yellow, or red? Like, that's what we want to know. But in an organization, and I believe it relates to detachment as well. As sales leaders, we have to detach from some of that and embrace and celebrate teamwork, mentorship that's going on organically between colleagues, creating a safe place for people to share ideas, and collaboration. It's very hard to measure collaboration on a metric, but as a sales leader, that's one of the traits of a winning team. And that's something that I have found can be the differentiator between lots of really great ideas and discovery versus just continuing to do the same thing and have the same result if it's not a winning result.
All right, Warren. So let me describe a situation for you, because as you were talking, I was thinking about this, and I'm thinking, hey, we got reps out there that go, I'm with you, Warren. I want to be that type of person. I want to have these conversations. However, I got a sales manager that's all about the numbers. How many calls you make today? What information do you have so far? When are you going to close the deal? And, culturally, what he wants or she wants as a manager really is impacting my ability to execute. Any advice for those situations?
Yeah, I think we all, so two parts to this answer. So the first part is what I'm hearing you share is pressure. And I have actually another second side to this. But pressure, when it's personal pressure, career pressure, the feeling that even there's some scarcity in your job and your security for your income and your family, what kind of benefit is that for you out in the sales field? And here's my exact example of the proof that what I'm sharing is accurate. Think about that one producer that's just a beast inside your office. Think about the most successful salesperson that you know. Well, guess what? They got plenty of money in the bank. They got plenty of pipeline, meaning new prospects that they know they're meeting. They got plenty of branding out there that a whole network knows, hey, if I need X, Y, or Z, this is the person to call. And so my point about that is they're showing up to their meetings. Do you think they are on the feeling that their job is on the line or that they need that dollar? No, they're accidentally detached because they're going, I'm good. You could say yes or no. I don't care. And this is where I look back at my career. I grew up in a household where my dad was an entrepreneur. He owned an air conditioning business. When you think about the kind of feeling you love as a prospect or as a customer, isn't that family business vibe the favorite that we all have? Like, it's the feeling of you're not being manipulated, that they really care about their name and what their value is and what their customers are feeling, and the success of what they do in their community, as opposed to something that's a little more disconnected to that, and it's metrics, metrics, metrics. So that's the first thing I was going to say. Think about that top producer and how they get to naturally be detached because they look good both in the bank account and on the metrics. And then the second thing is when it comes to pressure, like you have sales pressure from a manager, you have pressure from an organization, you might even have personal pressure. What I always recommend, an exercise that can really help you, is to go down an inventory of what you've got in your arsenal. In other words, if my blueprint is solid, but it takes 7 months to see the benefit of that. And that reminds me of when I first started my farmers insurance agency back at the beginning of my career. I started with nothing. I started with not even enough to pay a mortgage. But I knew on paper that if I do these winning activities and I stay true to my vision, that no matter what kind of mess I make for myself, in 7 months, I'm golden, right? And so sometimes you have to detach from the current. And one of the things, it's funny, I would go in my backyard and just stare at the sky. And I would pray, of course, because I think faith is a big part of all of us and how we hang on during tough times. But I would just try to visualize, instead of thinking about the next 3 weeks, I put an escalator in my backyard all the way up into the heavens, that I was like, here's what's going to happen over the next 30 years of my career. And I just saw the success, the clients, the business, the money coming right into my backyard, just to like reduce the cortisol levels and think bigger, think longer. Um, Last little thing on this is, through my podcasting and the interviews that I've done and meeting clients, something that you constantly see is where people have big challenges where they're in debt. People start companies and they could be $500,000 in debt or $5 million in debt, but there's always a turnaround. A lot of times you see them turn it around, and all of it relates to timing, strategy, putting one foot in front of the other. So if you're in a sales organization and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to go from the bottom of the list to the top, the first part is just making a plan that you believe in and timing it in a real way that you can detach from the pressure of urgency for just a moment so you can get the right things in place. But it takes a vision, and it takes taking the moment to map it out.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I was also thinking about, those reps that are there, right? They got their head in their hands and they're kind of, oh, but you don't understand. And I go, hey, some of it is like it's um, all that emotion and all that pressure is not helping you. I'm a big believer in pressure makes diamonds. However, you got to manage that pressure. That
Yes.
pressure should be pushing you to do the right things, not more of the wrong things.
Yeah. And the other thing is that to me, when it comes to pace and urgency and closing deals, all of these things, if you think about it, I'm not saying don't have any feeling that you want to close a deal. My point is sell the assessment, the process of doing a good job versus the result. Started off thinking about, it's not for me, the win of this meeting isn't coming out with a yes or no. The win for me is recognizing where I can add value, be more valuable to this prospect than they are to me, and ultimately start the process of making them a client. And it really does, it does require authenticity, you showing up in a listening manner. It's that whole alligator versus an elephant. Be an elephant, ears, listen, and know that this is another thing relating to producers. There are a lot of experiences that we have that when people start engaging in conversation, when we're talking about their business, you'll naturally have insights that are going to make a difference. That's what leads to the next steps, and differentiating yourself based on a full conversation versus something that's, again, completely about you. Keep it broad, keep it about the prospect, see the challenges, but show up with insights and strategy.
So to your last point, just to make sure our audience gets this, the art of detachment is not the art of not caring about what
No,
you're selling. It, in
you
fact,
care
it,
more. You care more because you're,
exactly I was thinking.
yes,
And
yes,
because you got to put more effort into thinking about, I wrote this post recently about listening, and I go, one of the tips is be better prepared. So the more prepared you are with what research you do about the company, what success stories do you have in your back pocket, the more able you're going to be to listen,
yeah,
because you're not searching for a story as a person's talking. You're relaxing and sitting back and absorbing it, and being willing to be curious and even learn more, because in your back pocket, hey, if they go, well, have you seen this before? You already have that story ready to go,
yeah,
because you're already prepared going in there. But the preparement, because I have pet peeves, Warren. One of them is I hate the word pitch, which is a
mm,
word that's often used in sales.
mm-hmm.
And the reason for it is even the word pitch makes it sound like, hey, I'm going to talk and I'm going to, pitch you something to influence you to get you to buy. And he goes, I think it should really be about what, like you just said, why don't we first come in? I'm here to listen. I have expertise in this area. Here's some examples of how I helped others. I love to know more about your situation. That's not pitching them on buying something. That's more of that assessment that you talk about, that proper discovery up front.
And yes, you are spot on, Carlos. And to just like high five you on it, I call it too capability dumping. So going back to detachment, if I'm going to try to prove to you what a great brokerage I'm with and what a great agent I am and how much I know, that means I'm just going to sit there and tell you all my capabilities and what I can do. And I'm going to take our 30 minutes together and capability dump on you and leave this meeting not just with no yes or no, which that can be intimidating for a prospect, number one. But number two, we leave the conversation and I have no pathway to make a difference. I have no observation, because here's the other thing. Speaking of research, when I see producers do the proper research before they even make a cold call, they can find out what the exciting opportunity is. Perfect example would be You see an organization that when you start looking into them, you see the CFO is brand new. That makes a big difference in how I'm going to have the conversation with her, despite, compared to someone who's been there 10 years. Maybe I also see that there's an organization that she worked at prior to becoming a CFO at this company. That also could change the conversation and how we build rapport. But but it goes on and on. It also goes into the fact of, what is the structure that would be best for this organization? You don't know that until you do a little bit of research, and that research gets you excited to make the phone call, because the data and information that you've already discovered, you're already in a professional aspect getting excited about what you can do for them, how you can make an impact financially or however else that you can do it. Because yes, quantifying time, money, removing pain, adding a culture that works great for them, which I'll tell you right now, in commercial insurance, what we see all the time is cost of labor is a major pain point. Well, in my world, there's two really significant ways that I can make an impact, but I would never want to just capability dump. I want to uncover, number one, that the person I'm meeting with can validate that that's one of their pain points too. And if it is, now I have alignment and I can take them down the conversation. But yeah, it's incredible. And it's incredible to get to the point where you go from, oh my God, I got to consciously think of what all these things that I'm going to try to bring up and talk about in this meeting, to no, these are the things that I'm going to learn more about that will naturally emerge the conversation that adds value and creates the relationship.
So, Warren, I got a question for you, because as a business owner, multiple businesses that you've owned throughout your career, and I'm thinking about other business owners out there or leaders, any advice on how they instill this art of detachment culture across their teams or across their organization?
Well, from a sales organization standpoint, I think number one, you have to believe in the philosophy. You have to believe that you want your salespeople to show up to a meeting with a center of curiosity and insight. Like if that's part of your business model, and you know that your impact can make a difference, and that if you can position the ability to know what hoop they want to shoot the ball through is part of the equation, it's doing those strategy meetings prior to the first appointment to think about, what are all the potential outcomes here? Like, what, through our research and what we've read and what we know about this company, maybe even our commonalities and connections, what do we take that we already know without bias, and think of a few line items that would really resonate to be curious about? And then if one of those three or none of those three work, where do we pivot to next? So I think it's more about preparation. It's about strategizing with your team prior. But no doubt, in any sales organization, yes, you care about the results, you care about the metrics, you care about how many appointments that are being made, how many calls are going, what is our closing ratio? All of that you're going to see everywhere. But if you want a culture of caring, where you actually care so much that people want to do business with you because they like, trust, and feel comfortable with you, you have to be thinking with the customer in mind all the time. And that's my number one thing. Kick off any type of conversation you have when it comes to sales, client minded. And to me, that due diligence, that level of doing the right thing, builds your reputation, builds your branding, and gets your phone ringing. And there's no doubt about that. And again, going back to, what's the difference if I create such a culture that everyone's under so much pressure that they can't perform, what benefit is that?
Agreed. I like that. It's kind of this customer first type of mentality going in. Warren,
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day long, but I'm going to run out of time. So tell me a little bit about yourself, or tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a dad of three. It's funny. I'm in this interesting part of life where my kids are all adults now, and a couple of them are in sales. So it's been very fun to watch them and see how that has changed life a bit. Professionally, I've been in the insurance business since 2002. I've I've had a few different agencies that I've owned and sold. I started out in the captive market, captive meaning in the insurance world, I was a farmer's insurance agent and had one solution that I would depend on for all things insurance. Ultimately sold that business and went independent. I've worked with some national franchises that I'm very proud of, whether it's the Tilted Kilt or Vision Source. Again, just using the principle of how do we make a difference, and ultimately sold my insurance agency and found myself in a couple of the world's largest organizations, able to make an impact in different ways, from sales and strategy to even the work that I've done with the Oil and Gas Global Network and my background with energy risk. Commercial's just been what my career has been all about. And now I'm very happy to say I'm 4 months at Tricordia, VP of sales. So I'm helping clients all the way from Texas to Florida and up to Tennessee. And I have some really great market leaders that work with me. And it's funny, my career has changed from, I do work with a lot of clients, yes. So that's just a passion I have. But now I'm in this a place that I find very rewarding, where I'm helping coach and help others raise their game and take their careers to a new level. So it's been really fun.
It's great. And if someone wanted to get to know you better, what's the best way for them to reach you?
What I tell everybody, I'm really a LinkedIn guy. Like, if you find me on LinkedIn, because my name is so peculiar, it's Spiwak, Spiwak. If you find me on LinkedIn and you want to have a conversation, whether you're in the insurance business or you're running an organization where your OpEx, operation expenses, are a little bit out of whack and insurance is a problem, or going back to the cost of labor, if that's a pain point, hit me up. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody that is looking for help or wants to share something that can make a difference. So always happy to have a conversation. LinkedIn would be the best way.
All right. And then our final question, what's your 1% edge? What are you working on these days to get 1% better every day?
It's interesting. Right now, I'm really in this place. Like I said, I'm working with a lot of sales leaders now. So I have people that are all over the country that have sales teams that report to them. So one of the things that I've really been focused on is, and I don't know so I guess I would say it like this. When you think of a great baseball coach, they're not running to first base and catching the ball for the first baseman. It's about the coaching. It's about the insights of how to do it. So where I'm at right now is scalability, scaling the things that work, and not going back to the art of detachment. I am detached from just my point of view. So one of the things that I'm looking to do, and that I've been doing these last 4 months, which has worked significantly well, is creating framework, but with the ability for our sales leaders to emerge their own points of view, their own findings, and bring it back to the team. So I don't know if that resonates with you or that makes sense the way I said it, but that's where I've really found to be working well, because these incredible people that I work with, they can apply some of the things without the requirement to do it my way. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's a great way to also kind of encourage innovation, right? So like you can, hey, here's some bare minimums. This is the I expect from you, but the way you get there, or if you develop new things, it's a great way to drive innovation within your organization.
Yeah, and my final thought on this is, for anyone who's listening to this that is under a lot of pressure, I want you to remember, like, let's think about Beaver Cleaver for a minute, or even the Brady Bunch. Just think about how life used to be, where you would get in your car with maybe some carbon copy papers, and you might, if you're lucky, have 2 meetings in a day, because you got to drive there. Life was so different. There was no cell phones. You don't know if your kids are safe, or if your spouse needs you, or if anything's going on. You don't have access to this 24/7 world that we live in. As much as it can be a curse, you also have to just keep in mind that our prospects are getting hit in every direction. They're getting hit nonstop. And you yourself are working more than probably at any time in the world that people have worked to get a deal. So have compassion for yourself, find out your strength, play to your superpower. Everyone has a superpower. Ask the people around you what it is, and leverage that, and detach from the stress, show up with optimism, and the world will be your oyster. That's what I say.
Love it. Thank you, Warren. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. All right, everyone. This does it for this week's episode. If you found some value in our conversation, please comment back, subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success.